Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be working on my January spread in my reading journal inspired by Alice in Wonderland. Hello beautiful people, welcome to the channel. For those of you who may have missed me setting up my reading journal, you can check the tag at the top of the screen here, and linked is going to be that video. This is my Alice in Wonderland themed reading journal, and in this book I'm going to be tracking everything I read this year, the order, my ranking of it, my thoughts on it. And at the end of the year, I'm going to rank my top 10 books in order and mark them down on this page. As I go through and I read a book, I'm going to be checking it off here, and each month I'm going to be tracking what I've read that month and sort of my thoughts and opinions and responses to that book or series. Today we are going to be setting up my January spread, my pages for tracking my reading for this month, as well as the first journal page of my January section. This month I have been mostly reading the Hallows series. So for January, since it's the first month of the year, I kind of went the first bit of the Alice in Wonderland story. She is reading in a tree, she sees a rabbit and she falls through the rabbit hole, and there's a door she can't get through. So here I am drawing a doorknob and the keyhole. For this month, I wanted to start off with that doorknob. It's sort of starting off my journey as Alice is starting her journey, and I wanted to have this picture of a girl reading in a tree as sort of that tribute to how it started. It's also how I'm starting my year in books and trying to read more and explore more adventures in literature. Then I'm coloring in this keyhole, so it's a nice dark, so it's a nice deep black. And I'm putting in the little white rabbit running through the keyhole, and then this printable of a key, a sort of large Victorian key. Now on this page is where I'm going to be tracking any quotes from the books I'm reading that just sort of stand out, and then at the end of, I guess, the year, or at some point, I'll be taking some of my favorite quotes from these monthly quote pages and moving it to my annual quote page to be able to look back on and sort of see those that really moved me while I was reading. The next page we're working on is my monthly tracking. So at the top of this page is going to be my books, short stories, poems, and pages read, and then there's a calendar here of days read. So every day that I read a book, I'm going to color in that square. And again, part of the Alice in Wonderland theme is I wanted to have the little bottle of Drink Me, the little plate of cookies for Eat Me, because that's sort of a big theme in this first chapter, but also throughout the book of Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to keep the general spreads probably Alice in Wonderland themed in this journal, and then I'll have individual journal pages that use some of the same elements of like the red, the black, the paper with some writing on it, the scrapbooking paper, as well as other printables from that book. So there will be sort of some consistency throughout the journal, but each page that's dedicated to the books I'm reading will be unique to the book I'm reading, while still harmoniously fitting into the overall theme of the journal. And then on the adjacent page is where I am going to be tracking sort of what I'm reading. So as I read a book, the title and author is going to go here under books, and then I have a little key here at the bottom because I'm going to track the number of pages of each book, but then under G is going to be for genre. And genres I'm looking at are fantasy, and that's all fantasy, so urban fantasy, high fantasy, classic fantasy, whatever I happen to read. For young adult, for romance, for science fiction, for nonfiction, for short stories or poems, that's going to go here in the genre, and then under the star is going to be my star rating of that book. At the end of each month, I'll take the information from this section and I will move it to the other tracking pages at the beginning of the journal, and I'm going to do this each month so that at the end of the year I can look at my stats at the beginning of the book, which is going to be the books I've read, the titles, their ranking, and pages, my favorite books. Just all of that stuff is going to sort of be moved over to those early pages so I can keep track of the year as an overview. And then if I want more details on what the genre or the breakdown of each individual month, I can come to the month and then I can look at these stats here. And then if I further detailed want to look at my thoughts on the individual books, that's where I'll go to the individual journal pages. And speaking of which, we're now moving over to the first journal spread. This is for a series called The Hallows by Kim Harrison. I absolutely love this series. I am currently 10 books through the series, and there's 15 or 17 books in the series. The red and black really works with the main character, and the printables I'm doing in like clip art printables, so there's not going to be a lot of contrasting color here. It's like the black and white with some pops of red. The Hallows is an urban fantasy series by Kim Harrison. It takes place in an alternate reality to our own, where things are very similar to our world if things branched off in the 1960s. In this world, there was biowar. There was some tainted tomatoes that wiped out about half the human population of the world. And this revealed the presence of other creatures that were not human. Things like witches, vampires, werewolves, pixies, all kinds of cool creatures and beings that during what is called the turn, when society was falling and so many humans were dying, these other entities came out of hiding, seeing as they no longer had to be afraid of the sheer numbers of humans coming after them, and they basically became the foundation of the infrastructure of how society works. Vampires took on sort of the underworld, the mafia, if you will, but they were huge influential members of running cities. This series specifically takes place in the United States, in a place called the Hallows. That's sort of the foundation of this series. In this story, we follow Rachel Morgan, who is the protagonist, is a witch who's a bounty hunter. When we meet Rachel Morgan, she is at this breaking point in her job and lucks into a way out and takes it. She goes into business with Ivy, who is a bisexual Asian living vampire, and that has a whole lot of things. That has Ivy coming to terms with who she is and coming to terms with her relationship with Rachel. And then we have Jenks, who is her backup. He is a pixie. He has all of these skills that he utilizes as her backup, as her tech support, as her support as she's going through. These three all have their individual struggles, and they learn how to grow as individuals and how to become better friends to each other and to support each other and become found family. Like a lot of fantasy series, we start with the small things of retrieving a stolen goldfish, and by the end of the last book, we're saving the world. And at every step of the way through that, Rachel and her team are constantly kicking butt and taking names. And this series is basically a coming of age in a way that I love. A lot of times we think of coming of age and fiction as your 11, 12 coming into your teenage years, or more recently it's sort of become in the teenage years. This is a coming of age in your 20s, kind of like Friends in the fantasy world. It's the trying to figure out how to be a grown-up, how to accept who you are, how to stop seeing the world as black and white the way you kind of see it as a child, that, this is right and this is wrong, and start to understand that people's motivations are sometimes just as important. Their intentions are just as important to consider when you're looking at their actions and trying to judge a person's character. There are some morally gray characters in this series that I love. I think the series overall is just so wonderful. I keep coming back to it. It is one of those things that I think really shaped who I am as a writer and what I enjoy as a reader, because it is all the things I love in fantasy, but it's got this wonderful, edgy, modern take to it. The imagery that I've used on this spread, we have the handcuffs here, because Rachel is a bounty hunter and she often has to take someone in and restrain them in some way. Her favorite cuffs had these charms on them that meant that they couldn't teleport out, they couldn't use magic. There were just a whole bunch of different charms that affected the person wearing the handcuffs. So that's what those are there for. We have the pixie in the middle for Jenks. The red is sort of to symbolize the blood struggles that Ivy has. And then we have the witchy paraphernalia of the potion bottles. And then the horse is representative of a character we meet early on, but get to know a lot more about, Trent, throughout the books. So if any of that sounds interesting, check out this book. That is what I've been reading for the month of January. It's pretty much all I've been reading is tearing through this series, though I am starting to read Harry Potter to my youngest son. He is now being inaugurated into the Potterverse and loving it. So we will show you a bit of that next month when I've actually made it more than a couple of chapters through with him. I hope you guys enjoyed this little flip through, setting up my January as well as my January reading wrap up of this series. I am new to all of this. I am doing my best. So if you have any suggestions on other information I should include, things that I shouldn't say in these videos, drop it down in the comments below. I would love your input. I have been binging so many channels and seeing all the different styles that are out there, and this is sort of my take on doing a reading wrap up and a reading journal, as this is all brand new to me. If you are enjoying this content, please give it a thumbs up so that the algorithm knows I'm bringing you good content and I know to keep bringing you more bookish content. If you want to hear more from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss a beat and you'll be notified of new content as it comes out. It also really helps support the channel. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I will see you next time. Keep reading, my friends.